Hey guys, and welcome back to another GuideTech Podcast, episode number 3. And today, as always, I will be your host, Garrett Shackelford, and joined with me is Logan, CEO and founder of Mallard. Logan, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, for sure, man. So I know this last weekend we're already in the middle of the week, but this last weekend you went to Houston Safari Club. How'd that show go?
It was a great show. I mean, ultimately, the Safari Club International, like nonprofit, is very supportive of providing a place for outfitters and vendors to come together to sell their trips, and I think it brings out a lot of international outfitters for sure. But I think it is one of the best places to showcase what you do and your brand and how you do things, that your prices and a lot of people come to those shows to buy, right? And some people come for
Right.
information, right?
Yep. Yeah, I was lucky enough to go to the Dallas Safari Club, which I had never been to the Houston one, but the Dallas Safari Club the weekend before was huge. That was actually my 4th year going, but this year it just seemed like a huge turnout. I guess it's just getting out of that COVID routine that they had. Um, but no, I love going to the shows. I love getting to see all the interactions that are happening within the industry because we're always just so stretched out here where there's guides and charters are so spread out across the map, and just to see everyone all in one place is always great.
Right.
But that leads into today's topic, which is going to these trade shows and the purpose of them, the benefits of them for an outfitter or fishing charter. So I'd love just for us to dive into that, and Logan, just kind of hear your thoughts and perspective on mainly for outfitters and fishing charters, what those benefits are, and then we can talk about maybe some ideas and tactics and how to make the most out of their trade show.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd like to flip the question back on you because you said something very interesting that I didn't know, that you had been for the last 4 years. So, well, among other things, like we've only been in the trade show kind of circuit for like the last 2 years. But Garrett, why did you feel like it was so important to go for the last 4 years? I mean, what
Yeah.
what triggered you to go the first time, and why do you keep going back?
Yeah, so when I first started going, I was the owner of Bourbon Media back then. This was before the acquisition and me coming on to Mallard Bay. But, I wasn't having a booth or anything like that, but I knew I needed to get my face out there and interact with people within the industry. And like we stated earlier, like that's where everyone's gathering together, are these different trade shows across the country. And I was in hopes that one, just going to network with people. I wasn't going necessarily to sell them on anything like that, but I was just going to get to know people throughout the industry. I have a huge belief that your network, when you're a business owner, is one of your like strongest things that you can have, and that's just getting out and getting your face out there, getting to know people, becoming friends, and honestly trying to learn like what are outfitters doing when they go to these trade shows. Are they doing trade show offers? Are they going there to land trips? Are they going to just mingle with clients that they know will be there, that they've already had up to their place, just to keep that relationship going? So that's kind of why I went. There were some outfitters that I worked with, and just putting my face in front of them was really important to me. And then lastly, the next biggest one is, it was honestly for like me and my wife just to get out of the house and go do stuff, go be involved in
Right.
this industry. And I wanted to show my wife, she understands it now, but when she was first introduced to it, she was late coming to this industry, and I wanted her to just see how great of people it's filled with, and all the different cool adventures we could go on and everything like that. So I think I was trying to sell her on what I did for a living, and getting her excited and make her want to travel and go with me to go do these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I started doing it. It was local stuff. I went to NWTF one year just with me and her, and our daughter. And again, that one was just a great turnout, and it was just very eye opening back then to just see how massive this industry actually is. It's a step back from being on the social media front and like actually meeting these people in
Yeah.
person. So, but yeah, that's why we started doing it and why I started doing it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, one show you mentioned in particular that I really didn't understand like how big these trade shows can get until I went to NWTF
Hmm.
last year.
Yeah.
And, I haven't been to Safari Club International, but I know it's a big one. But that NWTF trade show and like, our booth there this past year kind of got shoved in the corner with the other
Yeah.
groups, and then we ended up, finding one place to go because an outfitter of ours wasn't going to be able to make it. And so, like, I think there's two things that made me realize the value of the trade shows, and I think one has to do with outfitters, and one has to do with just the brands in the industry, and that you don't have to have a booth to go to these things. Obviously, like it's open to the public, right? But in order to get value out of the show, like as a business, you don't have to have a booth. I mean, booth and all that setup, like that's expensive. It's a lot of logistics, but you can go to meet people in the industry and especially brands that you want to rep and you want to essentially sponsor your outfitter, kind of join their pro staffs. Like it's a great opportunity to meet those people they want to support outfitters. Well, why do they want to support outfitters? Because you're on the front lines with their end customer, potentially showcasing their product. Like you're showcasing how good and how durable their products are. So that's why all these businesses have outfitter programs, is essentially because you're the front lines, and they want their product in the hands of the customer that's going to use it the most and really test it. So I think it's a great opportunity, and the networking, like Wyatt, really leaned into with building relationships in the industry through the trade
Right.
shows, really came apparent to us when we went to the first Delta Waterfowl Expo. It was the first time they had the expo, and when we went there, you know, you don't realize how many people have never heard of you until you go to these types of shows, and you realize, yes, there's so much more awareness you can have for your brand and your personal brand, as well as the brand of your outfitter and everything else, right? So
Oh, for
I mean,
sure.
overall, it's talking to outfitters and guides that are there for that are there to connect, but sometimes they're searching for a solution to problems, and sometimes yeah, you go and everyone's there to spend money, so you might buy a couple things you don't need, but everyone's there to support each other in the industry, and the passion that you see at trade shows is unmatched, right?
For sure. And, even back to your example about outfitters, even if you don't have a booth, the importance of doing that. Actually, when I was out at Dallas Safari Club, a couple weeks ago, I ran into one of our clients, Brian Glass, and I asked him what he was doing here and if he had a booth. And he said, "No, I don't have a booth. I'm just here talking with brands, one that I already work with, and then brands I would potentially like to work with." And I thought that was a super smart idea. And now, if you have a booth, there's obviously upsides to that. There's people like you've said walking the floor looking for those trips,
Mhm.
but I think there's like an art to having a booth. There's one being charismatic when people are walking by, but then there's other tactics that outfitters could use while having a booth that I think we could help them um, with even just thinking about whether they use our product or not at their booth, but just the thought of, hey, what can I do to make sure that this is productive? So do you have anything off the cuff that you can think of for a strategy that an outfitter could bring to one of these trade shows if they're going to invest in a booth?
Yeah, I think if you're going to invest in a booth, I think the main thing that is not necessarily at the forefront of your mind is the fact that some of these people come willing to buy right then and there.
Hmm.
They don't necessarily need to be courted and followed up, and the sales aspect of it doesn't have to come after the show. And I think we learned that when we partnered with Blackwater during the Dallas Safari Club show, because they had a booth, and we had Peyton and Wyatt go there and help them set up and sell their trips on the spot. And they were able to generate
Yeah.
system of checking out clients and getting them booked and landing them right then and there, rather than waiting and following up.
Yep.
Because when someone has that intent to buy, you want to capitalize on it immediately. And so
Yes.
potentially, if you're not following through on that in person when you have their attention, it could be wasted value essentially. So, I mean, if you just look at the amount of bookings that Blackwater, when we have a case study, and we'll provide access
Yeah.
to the case study so you guys can just see that value for free. But I mean, for the hours that you're there, if you're able to get bookings and people to pay, you can cover the cost of that trade show then, instead of,
Yeah.
questioning, okay, well, like, is this guy really serious or not? Well, you can find out.
Right. Right. Yeah. And going back to that Blackwater case study, just to throw out the number, they booked $78,000 in trips, and they were at their booth for a total of 18 hours while they were there. And I think that speaks towards your ability to be able to book them, because if you think about it, when someone calls you as a lead, so we run paid ads for our clients, and they're calling these leads and stuff, and that interaction, yes, it's delayed because you're having to find time to call these people. But if you're not ready when you get on the phone to talk to them and convert them, and then you're taking a long time to follow through, it's the same thing as at these shows. So you got to be ready to convert them. And to me, it's just like the speed to the lead is what we're creating for them. It's taking out the ability for the client to go and walk around and network with other people, because you never know if they might go walk to the next booth over and click better with that guide. So you want to make sure you're able to close them quicker, and them know that they got their trip planned for the coming year. And also being able to sit down with the client and show them like, hey, here's my availabilities for next year.
Yeah.
And have some kind of offer cooked up for the show, saying like, hey, if you book it today, you're going to get, X amount off, or this guarantee when you book with me at this show. So there's multiple tips and tricks for that. And like, if you don't use GuideTech, there's other things that you could do to, obviously increase your likelihood of booking these people. And like those I'll give you all the secrets. And these are things that are not used by outfitters. And that's like, coming up with a way to digitally collect these leads, collecting their name, their email, and their phone number, and how important that is, because so many outfitters traditionally, they have a pen and paper that people are writing on, and you can only read 20% of the names and their phone numbers and their emails. So you can't even get a hold of these people that have filled these out, because they have terrible handwriting, because they're in a hurry. There's people walking by them. They feel like they're blocking people. So just having a way for them to be able to step into your booth, collect their actual data on a digital format, and then have a way to trigger messages that go out to them, and then making sure that you're manually following up with them after. And so those are just some tips and tricks on how to do that, and let them know like, hey, thank you for visiting me at the booth. Like if you book now with me within the next week, you'll get this price. But after that, my prices are going up, and create that sense of urgency. And these are just some easy tips and tricks that people could follow now. But again, like if they just use our system, we can build that all out for them and make their ROI on their investment so much higher when they do that. And the client's experience just that much better. But yeah, like Logan said, we'll link to the case study so that you can get that, or you can just reach out to us and we'll send you over the case study so you can see it.
Yeah. And I know in our last episode, we mentioned like offer creation as something that like we wanted to cover in this episode. So like, I'd like to give you guys an example of why these trade shows provide like an interesting and unique opportunity for, you guys as outfitters. If you're interested in signing up for GuideTech, if you find us and, sign up from a trade show while we're on the road, you're going to get this exclusive offer that's only for, that situation, right? So you're going to get $1,500 in value, absolutely free. So you get GuideTech for 3 months, absolutely free, a complimentary iPad with LTE, which will help you showcase and sell your trips at the show or at your lodge when you're there, and help you keep track of all your dates. So we're waiving our client onboarding fee, and you're getting dedicated account manager and done for you onboarding absolutely free. And then of course you're getting the value of GuideTech, which is having access to all of our marketing services at 50% off. So ultimately you can see that we find value in offering specific, and this is the first time we've done this, but we find value in offering creative opportunities to, switch things up. You don't always have to be offering the same thing. You can have a special trade show discount for customers that meet you at a trade show. And yeah, they can only capitalize on it right then and there, right? So that's what's exciting about this trade show season is our unique offer that we have. But also, this is just one example of one way you can create an offer. And I know we want to dig into it a lot more, but the offer creation framework that we follow is, hey, we want to provide a ton of value and improve ourselves to you before you essentially commit to doing it for a year, right? I think that's kind of like one of the values that we're providing.
Yeah, and I think too for our GuideTech clients that are utilizing our software and streamlining that experience for their clients, not only are we providing that value to the guide that signed up for it, but now they're providing that same value to that client. So it boosts their confidence when they go to book with them, because now I can see all the details about my trip in one place. I can see exactly when I'm going. I can use all these different features. If I want to split pay and send out to my group their part of the invoice, I can do that all in one place. And what other outfitters are providing that? And that's only GuideTech outfitters. And so you're able to boost that confidence with those clients as well. So I think just like you said, we follow that framework, making sure that we're providing value. And when you provide value, you're always going to win over your competitor. So
Yeah.
we can move on
Yeah.
with this one. We can move on to our next topic. We're going to be talking about the state of the outfitter industry as a whole. And what that means is we're going to be talking about the relationships within the industry and how I hate to use this word, but the vibes within each category of this industry, whether it's the fishing industry and the big game or the waterfowl hunting specifically, they all have different vibes around them and how they interact with each other. And so, yeah, Logan, let's dive into that and talk about the three different categories and how they all work together.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's no secret that the outfitting industry is growing, and what comes with growth is competitiveness and the competitive nature of, chasing waterfowl or chasing big game in a particular area and selling those trips. Like, it's not foreign to have relationship dynamics when one guy leaves and goes to another outfitter, or a head guide leaves and starts an outfitter right in the same area as their previous employer. Those things happen in this industry, and a lot of the reason why it happens is just people get tired of or people, I guess, lose connection with the relationship they have. Like, so if you're a head guide and outfitter and you decide to start your own operation, but you're going to go and start a competitive operation, like that's a big deal. Like, that's not something that, that outfitter itself is going to take lightly. So now that you're their competition, it makes it that much harder for you, and also them. So it really is one of those things that happens a lot that not a lot of people talk about, but it is crazy to see that this industry is growing and people are starting up new operations. But I think that can cause certain issues.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it definitely does. And I think you hit the nail on the head with it, where there's people that have worked together at some point, they're branching off and working in the same area, or, even if they do travel off to a different location within the same state or something like that, like, yes, it is still competition. Everyone is still fighting over, or it creates a sense that you're fighting over different people. I will say, I think there's enough to go around within this industry for people who are looking to book trips. I mean, how much do you think is booked in trips in the hunting and fishing industry every single year?
Well, so the actual number of dollars spent in the U.S. and Canada on guided hunting and fishing trips is about $17 billion each year.
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
that's a number that our investors care about, but it's a number you should care about as an outfitter, understanding that, yeah, hey, there is an abundant amount of money to go around. You just have to understand that you're not always going to reach that entire target audience of outfitters in the first 3, even 5 years of of business, right? Certainly not in the first two,
Sure.
right? So, every outfitter is in its own unique stage of business. And I think one thing that trade shows provide, and just for the outfitting industry in general, is a way for you to showcase your brand, okay, and ultimately make the industry as a whole more collaborative, right? You're meeting guys that are
Right.
doing things different from you, maybe in other parts of the country that, hey, that's something that you could try out where you're at, right? So it's not always about the competitiveness. It ultimately, the industry itself is coming together and coalescing around, certain causes. And one of the causes is, hey, we want to make outfitting as easy as it is, as easy as possible, right? It's already hard. You're already tired. There's a lot of things that you can do to help yourself get some of that time back and alleviate some of these pains that, come with managing the books, right? Because ultimately, as the industry grows, that's going to become a big part of it.
No, for sure. And I think like one thing, there's obviously going to be the competitive nature, and everything we've talked about, it happens in every industry. Like you could take it outside the hunting and fishing space, and that happens. Um, but I think one of the biggest things to remember, and like something that if everyone could get behind and understand, is that like we've all been blessed with different skills and abilities and wisdom through people around us or from natural gifts that you might be born with. And we're all here to serve the same goal, and that is to serve others by getting them outdoors. Big game guides, waterfowl guides, fishing charters, you are all the gateway to God's creation outdoors for these people who are looking to book these experiences. And so if you can all just come together and understand that, hey, this we are, as a team, we are all a gateway to this. There's $17 billion in trips booked, and I'm going to get a fraction of that. But if we're all on the same team fighting in the same direction, I think everyone will win, and there'll be a lot less friction that's being created between everyone. And I agree. I think going to these trade shows and going and shaking hands with other outfitters, even if they're in the same area, and getting to know them would be a huge benefit, specifically to the waterfowl industry. Because I know we can go to the fishing charter, specifically the charter fishing industry. There's obviously like bad people in every group, but from my understanding, and I will say I'm way heavy waterfowl and big game hunting, but on the fishing side, on that relationship, these guys share the same port, and they have the
Yeah.
same restaurant, the same bar they're going to drink at, they're cleaning their fish at the same place, and they're passing trips off to each other.
Yep.
And so it's a completely different beast over there. And so it just seems like that face-to-face interaction that's happening over here in the fishing charter, that if we could bring it over to the waterfowl side, we'd see a lot less tension that's going on, because we get to be the front seat of that and see that tension that's happening. And so I'd love to see that characteristic that the fishing industry has come over to this waterfowl space.
Yeah. And to that point, I think it's important to bring up, how the fishing charters do that when they refer clients. Someone's reaching out to them and they have a list of preferred recommendations that they're saying, hey, I'm going to refer you to XYZ charter, and that charter is now going to give me a cut for that, but you were booked up that day. That's revenue that you completely could have lost out on, or completely can lose out on. But, just because your books are full and you get someone interested in your trips doesn't mean you can't have, your buddy 100 to 150 miles away in another city that, may not be at the point where he has 90% repeat clientele, and he could really use that. And then you don't have to stop making money just because your books are full, right? I think that is something that we'll be leaning into heavy, and is coming soon to Mallard Bay. So with that being said, I want to transition to the next topic and ask you, Garrett, what do you, and we talked about this a little bit with the last episode, but what do you believe clients care about?
Yeah. So I think you have different categories of clients. So you have people that are usually that are just solely the hunt based, that hunting experience base. And I think that's a small pool of people.
Hmm.
So I won't touch on them as much, but I do think that a majority of your clients are going to care the most about hospitality in their experience, building a friendship with you and seeing that you care. That is truly, I think, the biggest thing is seeing that you're putting effort in
Hmm.
towards what they've invested their money in for that experience. And that could look very different across the board. And by getting to know your client, you'll know which is where you need to spend most of your time. And of course, you should be putting 110% effort into each aspect of your experience. But I think, there's things that, like we covered in the Little Things podcast, is making sure that they, one, know where to be on that hunt, what the plan is so that they're clearly communicated to, seeing
Hmm.
that you care about their experience. And then making sure, like, if you're providing meals and you've promised this meal to them, that it's not a half-ass meal, that it's a meal that you've put effort into, whether you're cooking it in front of them or they know that it's not just a sandwich that you threw together for them that was super easy to make. They just want to see something that has effort.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the biggest thing is seeing that effort from you. Because if the hunting sucks, they can see you trying to scout. They can see you,
Hmm.
showing them why there's going to be a problem with hunting. Hey, I've scouted. This is going to be a tough hunt in the morning, but being clear with them, concise,
Hmm.
making sure that they feel cared for. But that's my perspective on what I think the client cares about. And I've got to hear a ton of clients, like, by being in the field and like taking photo and video and working with clients while I'm actually at their lodge. And so the clients will come to us and tell us that kind of stuff, and they'll be very positive or they can be negative in some instances. So I get to hear a lot of that very upfront, and I know the guides do too. I know you've had the same experience as well. So
Yeah.
I want to hear your take on it.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that are out of your control when you're an outfitter, but there are more things within your control. And one of the big things is the way you manage expectations. So the way you talk about the next hunt or the hunt the next day or the next
Mm-hmm.
day. Even providing the options like, hey, we've got two fields, one's with this very specific target species, but hey, we've got this other field that it's much better guarantee, they've been there consistently, but it may not be the target species you're going after. If you put them on that hunt without talking to them about it, they could have had the expectation that they were going to go and target this other species, and then now they're upset, right? So I think that matters. And then the attitude everyone carries, like not just you as the outfitter, the owner, the every single one of the guides, it has to have a similar attitude of like upbeat positivity because the clients don't want to hear the negatives, right? They they know that it's tough and that it's a hard job to do, but you know it, that can really affect the way a customer sees or views the operation, right? And so they want to see you out scouting and like working hard, right?
Yep.
They want to see that, and they really do expect that as part of the whole thing, that you'd be working your ass off to put people on the birds. I'm not saying that the majority get that, but it's easy when you get later on in the season to let go of some of those little things and get a little bit more
Get
lax
complacent.
about it because the birds are a little more stale. It is a little bit harder. It is the weather's changing, right? So it really matters how you carry yourself, and everyone in the operation carries yourself. That's like creating a culture of excellence at your outfitter. Is like
Yep.
we're the best of the best, and everyone has this standard that they abide by around what happens in the guide house to the clients in the blind, right? I think that's really important, and I'm not saying that it's bad. It's just clients really do care about that, and also to transition into the next thing, clients care about your story. They care about the stories that the guides tell in the blind. They care about who the people are around them and who they're hunting with, and ultimately that's why they come back. They come back because they're building that relationship with you, and they've heard your story. And Garrett, I'd like you to talk about like how important you believe from a marketing perspective telling your story at scale affects the brand.
Yeah. Well, I would go back to this and just have like a thought practice and knowing that like these guides that have these repeat book of clients, they're guides that spend time, like you said, in the blind or at the lodge communicating with these clients and having a good time. It's not always about hunting. And you can talk about your life and your story. So if that's causing people to rebook with you because they've built this relationship, why would we not put it out to people who haven't booked with you before?
Hmm.
People that you can now start building this relationship with. I know now on social media, a lot of people can feel as if they know that person that they followed for,
Hmm.
uh, several years or months, and they see them in person, and it's almost like, hey, we're buddies. Like I know you, you know me,
Hmm.
and then you're able to negate the whole them coming in and not trusting you. It boosts their confidence when booking with you. And that happens for us here at Mallard Bay. That is why we're doing this podcast. We want y'all to know the face behind the brand, but not just the face, but like the person that's, within that. And so, yeah, I think putting that out there is just a trust builder. It is
Hmm.
something that gets you past these initial stages of getting to know each other. And you can do it en masse
Yeah.
instead of just doing it to one person or one group at a time. Why don't we just do that on mass? And I've seen outfitters do that. I mean, I'll use a very popular example, and that's Toby Brolin. Toby put himself out there, and yes, he looked different, but he put himself out there in front of the whole world. He tells his story like y'all can't see it, but the poster behind me, the Panhandle Sportsman, he he told his story en masse, and we spent hours interviewing him. I think I spent a total of 16 hours interviewing him for that film so that he could be vulnerable, put his story out there, and we've seen the benefits of that so far. And so I think one, it was for him, it encourages people, and the next benefit that I would say, going off the encouraging, is if you're a guide, it doesn't matter what your story is. I've heard, coming up, great childhoods coming up from bad childhoods. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter. There's another kid growing up, and there's going to be another generation that comes up behind you. And it goes back to being that person that cares about the industry and being that gateway to God's creation for these people. But you give someone else confidence that they can go and do this when they find out that Toby's just a normal guy and he doesn't even think he deserves to have the platform that he has, and he's gone and built this empire, just a good guy from Amarillo, Texas, and it makes things more tangible and more realistic for them to go
Hmm.
out and achieve those goals. So that's what I'd say. I know it's super long winded, but I'd love to hear your take on it.
No, I mean, I think it's, I will say it's easier said than done to put yourself out there,
Yes.
especially when you're really telling your story from a point of like, yeah, this is real life for me, right? And it was a challenging thing for me to overcome as well. Like with talking with investors,
Yeah.
I tell the story about how Mallard Bay got started. I went on a trip with my dad and and we ended up getting double booked, and we got our hunt cut short and didn't fire a single shot. And that was why I started the business, was to help outfitters, alleviate that problem. We've all been there when it happens on accident, right? And there's only a few things that are within your control, and one of those things is to be honest and candid about who you are and where you come from. And it is a big step to like put that out there. So yeah, I mean, we're not saying it's easy by any means, but we've seen what
No.
happens for those that do, right? And we've seen it
Yeah.
for ourselves, right?
Uh, yes. And I think to add to that, one of the tougher parts is, who am I to put my story out there?
Right.
Why would anyone care to hear my story? Um, and I'll go back to the person that might be in the same shoes or very similar shoes that you were in when you were growing up, or you might not think that you've accomplished that much. But one thing that I've recently started doing that's just truly helped me is reflecting on, you know, all that I have done and saying, like, because you go through the day to day, you are in the day to day, and you like, you're on to the next task every single time. But when you sit back and truly reflect, you can take a deep breath and say, like, damn, I've actually helped be a part of building something, or I have built something successfully. And it just gives you that much more confidence,
Hmm.
one, sharing your story, but two, going into that next day with, giving 110% effort because you're capable of doing that. And so any outfitter or fishing charter who has started a business that's, young, or maybe you haven't hit that, like, that inflection point in your business where it takes
Hmm.
off, like, reflect on where you started at to where you're at now,
Hmm.
because that, I don't know what it is, but that just gets me fired up. And it's not being cocky, it's just creating confidence in yourself.
Hmm.
And there's a huge difference in being cocky and being confident. So I'd highly encourage every
Hmm.
outfitter, before you go and tell your story, just really reflect on where you came from and where you're at now. Think about what you're getting to do as a career, because it is a dream for everyone. I know social media glorifies it more than it might deserve, because it is tough, it is hard, and but it is something to be proud of that you've accomplished. So I would like to just add that, like, just reflect on all that you've done already.
Yeah, I mean, the job itself is already hard enough. And, as an entrepreneur, as entrepreneurs, we understand what it's like to be extremely hard on yourself. And sometimes the best thing to do is, take a step back, reflect with, being grateful for where you've come from and where you're at today,
Yeah,
and understanding that, hey, you're doing something that a lot of other people don't have the confidence to do. And then, you add telling your story on top of that, and that's further differentiating yourself and your brand from others that, haven't taken that step. So, talk about getting a competitive edge. That's one way of doing it. And I think that, the best outfitters around are really, really good at, getting the, you know, through no fault of their own, getting the client to like them and enjoy the company and the camaraderie that comes along with it. So, the recommendation that I just kind of wrap things up is, consider it, and just like you said, reflect, and, what you're willing to do to put that story out there is up to you. But I think that a lot of those that don't do it have, the personal kind of like hesitancy that anyone does before they start posting on social media. It's like, oh, people are gonna, hate me, or they're gonna think I'm egotistical, or vice versa. Like, none of that matters, right? It's like those that it resonates with will, and
right.
they will buy from you because of that, right? And it does take a lot for us to do this and put ourselves out there, because we
Oh,
want
for
the
sure.
we want the negative feedback, because we want to know exactly how we can get better. And unless you challenge yourself to be in that uncomfortable position, right, then you don't have that opportunity, right?
Well, I think too, like, one last thing before we close this out. I would like to comment that, telling your story, putting yourself out there, you are using marketing tactics to put it out there, but that is your brand. That is who you are. Toby Brolin is the brand of Cadillac
Hmm.
Creek. It's every essence is him. And so what building a brand does is tremendous for your company. Look, if you think about it like this, there's the movie The Matrix, and there is a guy who's being trained on doing whatever they do. I can't remember it, but he asked, "Once I learn this, will I be able to dodge bullets?" And the guy says, "You won't need to dodge bullets." And so when you build your brand and you're trying to sell somebody, when you're trying to increase your price, when you're trying to do all this stuff to grow your business, you don't have to dodge these bullets. You've built a brand that people want to be a part of at that point. And so that would be my final take on this, is truly you're building a brand with telling your story, and sharing the essence of who you are and what your outfitter is. But yeah, I think it's a super important tactic to go about, and it's not only beneficial for you, but it's beneficial for the industry as a whole. And I would highly recommend
Yeah.
getting into it. But
It's part of
yeah, Logan, I don't know if you have anything
just
else.
one thing at, it's part of the direction the industry is going. It's a upcoming
Hmm.
trend that you
Oh,
can capitalize on to grow your business and grow your brand. So
yes,
I definitely would
yes.
suggest considering leaning into it. And, I think that that's really my last 2 cents on the subject.
Yeah. So, well, if you do have an interesting story, you feel like your story is interesting, or you just want to talk to somebody about your story, just message me, Garrett Shackelford on Instagram or GuideTech on Instagram, and I would love to get on a phone call with you and just hear your
Hmm.
story. But other than that, we appreciate y'all listening to podcast number 3 from the GuideTech Podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you found value from this podcast. Leave a review and make sure to share it with your friends. And then we'll just see you next time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. See y'all later.